Sarah Martinez stared down the barrel of her rifle, sweat dripping into her eyes despite the cool morning air at the military training facility. The target stood 100 yards away, a simple black circle on white paper that might as well have been on the moon for all the success she was having hitting it. Around her, the crack of gunfire echoed as other trainees found their marks with increasing accuracy, but Sarah's target remained pristine, unmarked by even a single bullet hole. This was her third week at the Elite Marksmanship Program, a specialized course designed to identify potential military snipers and sharpshooters. Sarah had enlisted in the Army 2 years prior, driven by a deep desire to serve her country and prove that a small-town girl from Nebraska could excel in any field she chose. Her scores in basic training had been respectable in every area except one: firearms proficiency. While she could run faster, do more push-ups, and navigate obstacles better than most of her male counterparts, put a weapon in her hands and she became a liability rather than an asset. The other trainees had started to whisper. Some made jokes about how the military was lowering standards, while others simply avoided partnering with her during exercises. Sarah felt their eyes on her now as she prepared for another attempt, their mixture of pity and frustration almost tangible in the air. She had always been a perfectionist, the type of person who stayed up all night studying until she mastered every concept, who practiced piano scales until her fingers moved without conscious thought. But this skill seemed to elude her completely. Her shooting instructor, Sergeant Morrison, was a gruff man in his 50s who had seen combat in 3 different conflicts. He had worked with hundreds of trainees over the years, and Sarah could see in his weathered face that he was losing patience with her lack of progress. "Martinez," he barked, "you're overthinking it. Just breathe, aim, and squeeze. It's not rocket science, but it felt like rocket science to Sarah. Every time she lined up her sight, her heart would race. Her breathing would become shallow and irregular. Her hands would develop a slight tremor that threw off her aim by inches, which at 100 yards meant missing the target entirely. She had read every manual, watched countless instructional videos, and even sought advice from fellow soldiers during her off hours. Nothing seemed to help. The worst part was knowing that her entire military career hung in the balance. Without passing this marksmanship course, she would be reassigned to a non-combat role, likely in logistics or administration. While there was nothing wrong with those positions, they weren't why Sarah had joined the military. She wanted to be on the front lines, making a real difference, using all of her abilities to protect and serve. The thought of being sidelined because she couldn't master this one crucial skill was devastating. As she prepared for what felt like her 1,000th attempt, Sarah noticed a commotion near the instructor's station. A new figure had appeared on the range, someone she had never seen before. He was tall and lean, with close-cropped dark hair and an intensity in his eyes that commanded immediate attention. Unlike the other instructors who wore standard Army fatigues, this man wore Navy dress that indicated Special Forces training. The Navy SEAL trident on his chest gleamed in the morning sun. The mysterious instructor spoke quietly with Sergeant Morrison, occasionally glancing toward the firing line where Sarah and her fellow trainees continued their exercises. She couldn't make out their conversation over the sound of gunfire, but she noticed Morrison nodding and pointing in her direction several times. Sarah's stomach clenched with anxiety, wondering if her poor performance had attracted unwanted attention from higher-ups. Maybe they were discussing her removal from the program entirely. After several minutes of conversation, the SEAL instructor walked toward the firing line with a confident stride that suggested years of military precision. He moved with the fluid economy of someone who had been trained to eliminate wasted motion, every step purposeful and controlled. As he approached Sarah's position, the other trainees began to take notice, their own shooting becoming less focused as they tried to figure out who this newcomer was and what his presence meant. Sarah lowered her rifle and turned to face him as he stopped directly behind her firing position. Up close, she could see that he was probably in his early 30s, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to take in every detail of her stance, her grip on the weapon, and her overall demeanor. There was something both intimidating and oddly reassuring about his presence, as if he had seen every type of challenge the military could throw at a person and had developed solutions for all of them. "Specialist Martinez," he said, his voice calm but carrying an authority that made everyone within earshot pay attention. "I'm Chief Petty Officer James Rodriguez. I've been observing your progress, and I think we need to try a different approach." His words were simple, but something in his tone suggested that he saw potential where others saw only failure. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't destined to wash out of the program after all. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez studied Sarah with the analytical gaze of someone who had spent years breaking down complex problems into manageable components. He walked slowly around her position, observing her stance, the way she held her weapon, and even how she breathed. Unlike Sergeant Morrison's frustrated corrections, Rodriguez's assessment felt methodical and clinical, as if he was gathering data rather than passing judgment. "Tell me about your background before the military," he said, his tone conversational despite the formal setting. Sarah was surprised by the question, as most instructors focus solely on technical aspects of shooting rather than personal history. She explained her small-town upbringing in Nebraska, her academic achievements, her athletic success in high school track and field, and her decision to join the Army after college. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully as she spoke, occasionally asking follow-up questions that seemed unrelated to marksmanship. He wanted to know about her hobbies, her stress management techniques, and even her favorite subjects in school. Other trainees continued their shooting exercises around them, but Sarah noticed that several were stealing glances at their conversation, curious about this unusual approach to instruction. "You mentioned track and field," Rodriguez said, stopping directly in front of her. "What events did you compete in?" Sarah explained that she had specialized in long-distance running, particularly the 1,500-meter and 3,000-meter races. She had been successful because of her ability to maintain steady pacing and consistent breathing over extended periods, skills that had served her well in military endurance training. "Interesting," Rodriguez mused. "You have experience controlling your breathing and heart rate under pressure. You understand the importance of steady rhythm and consistent technique. These are exactly the skills required for precision shooting, yet you're struggling here. That tells me the problem isn't physical capability but mental approach." He asked her to demonstrate her shooting stance and grip, watching intently as she positioned herself and aimed at the target. After she had held the position for several seconds, he made small adjustments to her posture, moving her feet slightly, adjusting the angle of her shoulders, and showing her how to achieve a more natural sight picture. His corrections were subtle but precise, based on biomechanical principles rather than the generic instructions she had received before. "The human body is designed to work as an integrated system," Rodriguez explained as he guided her through the adjustments. "When you force yourself into an uncomfortable shooting position, you create tension that disrupts your natural stability. We need to find a stance that works with your body type and natural tendencies, not against them." For the first time since beginning the course, Sarah felt genuinely comfortable behind her rifle. The position Rodriguez had helped her find felt natural and sustainable, unlike the rigid stance she had been taught previously. Her breathing settled into a more regular pattern, and the weapon felt like an extension of her body rather than an awkward tool she was trying to manipulate. "Now, before you shoot, I want you to forget about the target completely," Rodriguez instructed. "Instead, focus on your breathing rhythm, just like you would during a long-distance race. Find that steady cadence that carried you through your track competitions. The target isn't going anywhere and there's no time pressure. Take as long as you need to establish your rhythm." Sarah closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, drawing on years of athletic training to find her natural cadence. She could hear the continued gunfire from other positions, but Rodriguez's calm presence helped her block out the distractions. When she opened her eyes and looked through her scope, the target seemed clearer and more stable than it ever had before. "Don't think about hitting the bullseye," Rodriguez continued, his voice steady and reassuring. "Think about following through with perfect technique. Focus on the fundamentals: sight alignment, breathing control, and a smooth trigger squeeze. The accuracy will come naturally when the technique is correct." Sarah took her time, settling into the natural shooting rhythm Rodriguez had helped her discover. She aligned her sights carefully, took a deep breath, let half of it out, and began to apply steady pressure to the trigger. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't fighting against her equipment or her own body. Everything felt coordinated and purposeful. The rifle fired with a sharp crack, and Sarah immediately knew something was different. The recoil felt controlled, her follow-through was smooth, and she maintained her sight picture even after the shot. Through her scope, she could see a small hole in the white paper, not in the center of the target, but definitely within the scoring rings. After weeks of complete misses, she had finally put a bullet on target. Rodriguez smiled for the first time since arriving at the range. That's what proper technique looks like, he said quietly so only Sarah could hear. You just proved that you have all the physical skills necessary for precision shooting. Now we need to build your confidence and help you develop consistency. Around them, several other trainees had stopped shooting to watch, having noticed Sarah's success. Sergeant Morrison approached their position with a mixture of surprise and curiosity on his weathered face. He examined Sarah's target through a pair of binoculars and nodded approvingly. The first positive feedback she had received from him since the course began. Looks like the chief has found something that works, Morrison said to Rodriguez. Mind sharing your methods with the rest of us? Rodriguez's response would change not only Sarah's trajectory, but also how marksmanship was taught at the facility. He had recognized that different people required different approaches, and that sometimes the most effective instruction came from understanding the individual rather than applying standardized techniques. Rodriguez's unconventional training methods quickly became the talk of the entire facility. Word spread among instructors and trainees alike about the SEAL who had helped the hopeless case finally hit a target. But Rodriguez wasn't interested in quick fixes or temporary improvements. He was building a foundation for long-term success, and that meant understanding not just what Sarah was doing wrong, but why traditional methods had failed her so completely. Over the next several days, Rodriguez worked exclusively with Sarah during designated training periods. He treated each session like a scientific experiment, testing different variables and documenting the results. They experimented with different shooting positions, various breathing techniques, and alternative methods of trigger control. Rodriguez kept detailed notes, tracking which approaches produced the best results and which created problems. Most people assume that military marksmanship is one size fits all, Rodriguez explained during one of their sessions. But elite snipers understand that precision shooting is highly individual. Your body dimensions, your dominant eye, your natural coordination patterns, even your personality type all influence how you should approach the fundamentals. Sarah discovered that her academic background actually worked against her in some ways. Her analytical nature led her to overthink every aspect of the shooting process, creating mental interference that disrupted her natural abilities. Rodriguez taught her to trust her instincts more and rely less on conscious control of every minor detail. This was a difficult transition for someone who had always succeeded through careful planning and methodical execution. The breakthrough came during their 5th training session together. Rodriguez had set up a series of different targets at various distances, each requiring slight adjustments in technique and mental approach. Instead of the standard bullseye targets that had intimidated Sarah, he used simple geometric shapes and even pictures of everyday objects. The change in target design had a surprisingly powerful psychological effect. Fear of failure was your biggest enemy, Rodriguez observed as Sarah consistently hit the alternative targets. Those perfect bullseye circles represented everything you thought you couldn't achieve. By changing the targets, we've removed that mental barrier and allowed your natural abilities to function properly. But Rodriguez's most innovative technique was yet to come. He had noticed that Sarah performed best when she wasn't consciously trying to hit specific target areas. Her natural hand-eye coordination was excellent, as evidenced by her athletic background. But conscious effort to control her shots was creating interference. He decided to test a theory that would challenge conventional marksmanship wisdom. I want you to try something that might sound strange, Rodriguez said, as they prepared for another training session. Instead of aiming at the target, I want you to aim at my hand. He walked downrange and positioned himself to the side of the target area, holding his hand up in a clear gesture. The request seemed absurd and potentially dangerous, but Sarah had learned to trust Rodriguez's methods even when they defied conventional logic. But, Chief, that's not safe, Sarah protested, her voice filled with concern. What if I actually hit you? Other trainees had gathered to watch this unusual exercise, and several looked alarmed at Rodriguez's unconventional approach. Even Sergeant Morrison appeared worried as he observed from the instructor's station. Rodriguez smiled confidently and explained his reasoning. You've proven that you have excellent natural coordination and instinctive accuracy. The problem occurs when you consciously try to control your shots and hit specific targets. By aiming at my hand, which you absolutely do not want to hit, your subconscious mind will naturally guide the bullet to a safe area near the target. It's a form of reverse psychology applied to marksmanship. The technique seemed dangerous and counterintuitive, But Rodriguez had positioned himself safely and had decades of experience reading shooters and understanding their capabilities. He knew that Sarah's natural instincts would keep him safe while simultaneously improving her accuracy on the actual target. It was a bold training method that few instructors would dare attempt. Sarah reluctantly agreed to try the exercise, though every instinct told her it was wrong to aim a weapon at another person. Even an instructor she trusted, she settled into her improved shooting stance, regulated her breathing, and aligned her sights on Rodriguez's upraised hand. The psychological tension was enormous, creating the exact type of pressure situation that would test whether her newly developed skills were truly solid. As she prepared to fire, Sarah felt her familiar anxiety beginning to build. Her heart rate increased, her breathing became less regular, and her hands developed a slight tremor. But this time, instead of fighting these sensations, she applied the mental techniques Rodriguez had taught her. She acknowledged the stress without letting it control her actions, maintaining focus on proper technique rather than worrying about outcomes. The rifle fired, and Sarah immediately knew the shot had been different from anything she had achieved before. The bullet struck the target with precision, landing in the scoring ring closest to center. Rodriguez lowered his hand and walked back to examine the target, nodding with satisfaction as he confirmed the accuracy of her shot. "Perfect," he said simply. "You just demonstrated that you have all the skills necessary for expert-level marksmanship. The only thing holding you back was your own mental approach to the challenge. Now we need to build consistency and confidence so you can replicate this performance under various conditions." The other trainees watched in amazement as Sarah continued to demonstrate improved accuracy throughout the session. Word of Rodriguez's innovative training method spread quickly through the military community, and other instructors began requesting information about his techniques. But for Sarah, the most important result was the growing confidence that she could succeed in her chosen military career path. Rodriguez's hand-raising technique became the catalyst for Sarah's complete transformation as a marksman. Within 2 weeks of that breakthrough session, she was consistently scoring in the top tier of her training class. But Rodriguez wasn't satisfied with simple target accuracy. He knew that real-world military situations demanded skills far beyond hitting stationary bullseyes in controlled conditions. Anyone can learn to hit targets on a peaceful shooting range, Rodriguez explained as he introduced Sarah to more challenging scenarios. But military marksmanship requires accuracy under stress, in adverse weather conditions with limited visibility, and while dealing with fatigue and emotional pressure. We need to prepare you for reality, not just qualification tests. Rodriguez designed a series of increasingly difficult training exercises that pushed Sarah beyond her comfort zone. They practiced shooting in simulated combat conditions with loud noises, smoke, and intentional distractions designed to break concentration. They worked in rain, wind, and extreme temperatures. Rodriguez even had Sarah perform physical exercises immediately before shooting sessions to replicate the elevated heart rate and muscle fatigue she might experience in actual combat situations. Each new challenge initially caused Sarah's performance to decline as she struggled to apply her newly learned skills under difficult conditions. But Rodriguez's patient coaching helped her understand that temporary setbacks were part of the learning process. He taught her to view each challenging session as an opportunity to strengthen her abilities, rather than as a test she might fail. Elite performers in any field learn to embrace difficult conditions rather than fear them. Rodriguez told her during a particularly challenging training session conducted in heavy rain. Weather, noise, stress, and fatigue become allies rather than enemies when you've trained yourself to adapt and overcome. This mental shift is what separates truly exceptional shooters from those who only perform well in perfect conditions. Sarah's confidence grew with each successful adaptation to new challenges. She began to understand that her initial struggles had been valuable experiences that made her more resilient and adaptable than trainees who had found early success with basic techniques. Rodriguez helped her recognize that her analytical nature, which had initially hindered her performance, could be an asset when properly directed toward problem-solving rather than self-doubt. The most significant test came during the 4th week of Rodriguez's specialized training program. He announced that Sarah would demonstrate her skills in front of a panel of senior military instructors from various branches of the armed forces. This wasn't just a routine qualification exercise, but an evaluation that would determine whether Rodriguez's innovative teaching methods warranted broader implementation across military training programs. This demonstration is about more than your individual success, Rodriguez explained as they prepared for the evaluation. Military training methods haven't changed significantly in decades. If we can prove that personalized instruction produces better results than standardized approaches, we might revolutionize how the military develops marksmanship skills across all branches. The pressure was immense, but Sarah had learned to channel stress into focus rather than allowing it to create interference. She understood that her performance would influence not only her own military career, but potentially the training experiences of thousands of future soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. On the day of the demonstration, Sarah faced the most challenging shooting scenario of her military career. The evaluation panel had designed a course that included multiple target types at varying distances, different shooting positions, time constraints, and environmental obstacles. She would need to demonstrate proficiency with multiple weapon systems and show adaptability to changing conditions throughout the course. As Sarah prepared for the first stage of the demonstration, she noticed Rodriguez positioning himself near the target area, just as he had during their breakthrough training session weeks earlier. He raised his hand in the familiar gesture that had become their private signal, reminding her to trust her instincts and natural abilities rather than overthinking the technical details. The first shots rang out with precision and confidence. Sarah moved through the course with fluid efficiency, adapting her technique to each new challenge while maintaining the fundamental principles Rodriguez had taught her. Her breathing remained controlled, her stance stayed stable, and her trigger control was smooth and consistent. Most importantly, her mental approach remained calm and focused despite the intense scrutiny from the evaluation panel. Target after target fell to her accurate fire, demonstrating not only technical proficiency, but also tactical understanding and adaptability. The observing instructors exchanged glances of surprise and approval as Sarah exceeded every performance standard they had established for the demonstration. Several took detailed notes about her technique and Rodriguez's coaching methods. As Sarah completed the final stage of the course, she realized that she had not only met the qualification standards, but had achieved scores that would place her among the top marksmen in her entire training facility. The transformation from complete failure to exceptional performance had taken less than a month under Rodriguez's guidance, proving that personalized instruction could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Rodriguez approached her with pride evident in his usually stoic expression. "Outstanding performance," he said quietly so only Sarah could hear. "You've proven that determination combined with proper instruction can overcome any challenge. But more importantly, you've demonstrated that every person has unique potential that can be unlocked with the right approach." The evaluation panel's response would determine not only Sarah's immediate future, but also the direction of military marksmanship training for years to come. The evaluation panel's reaction exceeded everyone's expectations. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the senior marksmanship coordinator for the entire military district, approached Rodriguez immediately after Sarah's demonstration with barely contained excitement. She had overseen thousands of marksman qualifications during her 20-year career, but she had never witnessed such a dramatic transformation in such a short period. "Chief Rodriguez, I need to understand exactly what you did here," Colonel Hayes said, her voice filled with professional curiosity. "In my experience, trainees who struggle with basic marksmanship typically require months of remedial training, and even then, most never achieve more than minimum qualification standards. Specialist Martinez just scored higher than 90% of our advanced marksmen." Rodriguez spent the next hour providing detailed explanations of his individualized training approach to the assembled panel of instructors. He demonstrated how he had analyzed Sarah's specific challenges, identified her natural strengths, and developed customized techniques that worked with her personality and physical characteristics rather than against them. His presentation was methodical and evidence-based, supported by the comprehensive notes he had maintained throughout the training process. Traditional military training assumes that standardized methods work equally well for all personnel, Rodriguez explained. But elite special forces units have always understood that peak performance requires personalized approaches. What we've proven here is that these same principles can be applied successfully to conventional military training programs. Sarah listened to the discussion, with a mixture of pride and amazement. Just weeks earlier, she had been on the verge of washing out of the marksmanship program completely. Now senior military leaders were discussing her case as a model for future training development. The transformation felt almost surreal, but the targets she had hit and the scores she had achieved were undeniably real. Colonel Hayes announced that Rodriguez's training methods would be studied and potentially implemented across multiple military installations. She assigned a team of training specialists to document his techniques and develop standardized protocols that could be taught to other instructors. This represented a significant shift in military training philosophy, moving away from one-size-fits-all approaches toward more flexible and individualized methods. But the most important development for Sarah came in the form of new opportunities that had opened up due to her dramatically improved marksmanship skills. Colonel Hayes informed her that she now qualified for advanced military specialties that had been previously unavailable, including scout sniper programs, special operations support roles, and elite marksmanship instructor positions. Specialist Martinez, your transformation demonstrates something we've always believed but rarely been able to prove, Colonel Hayes told her. Every person has unique potential that can be unlocked with proper guidance and determination. Your success will inspire changes in how we train thousands of military personnel in the future. Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside after the formal evaluation concluded. This is just the beginning, he told her. You've developed the foundation for excellence, but now you need to decide how far you want to take these skills. The military offers opportunities for marksmen that go far beyond basic qualification standards. Over the following days, Sarah received multiple offers for advanced training programs and specialized assignments. Military branches that had previously been closed to her were now actively recruiting her participation. She had gone from being a potential washout to being a sought-after candidate for some of the most prestigious positions in the armed forces. The decision wasn't easy. Each opportunity offered different advantages and challenges, from advanced sniper training that would require months of additional specialized instruction to immediate assignment to operational units where she could apply her skills in real-world situations. Rodriguez provided guidance, but he emphasized that the choice had to be hers, based on her personal goals and interests. Success in marksmanship was never really about hitting targets, Rodriguez told her during one of their final training sessions together. It was about learning to overcome obstacles, adapt to challenges, and maintain performance under pressure. These are skills that will serve you well regardless of which path you choose in your military career. Sarah realized that her struggle with marksmanship had taught her lessons that went far beyond shooting accuracy. She had learned to persevere through failure, to trust in personalized approaches rather than accepting universal solutions, and to maintain confidence even when facing seemingly impossible challenges. These lessons would prove valuable throughout her military service and beyond. As word of her transformation spread throughout the military community, Sarah began receiving requests to share her story with other struggling trainees. She discovered that her experience resonated with many people who had faced similar challenges in various military specialties. Her willingness to discuss her initial failures and the methods that led to her success inspired others to seek alternative approaches when traditional training methods weren't working. Rodriguez's innovative training techniques gained recognition at the highest levels of military leadership. He received orders to establish a new training development program that would create personalized instruction protocols for various military specialties beyond just marksmanship. Sarah's success had become the catalyst for a broader transformation in military training philosophy that would benefit countless service members in the future. 6 months after Rodriguez first raised his hand on the shooting range, Sarah found herself standing before a new group of struggling trainees as an assistant marksmanship instructor. She had completed advanced training programs that once seemed impossible and had been selected to help implement Rodriguez's personalized training methods across the military system. The transformation from failed trainee to instructor represented a journey that neither she nor anyone else could have imagined just months earlier. Sarah's new role involved identifying trainees who were struggling with traditional instruction methods and developing individualized approaches to help them succeed. She discovered that each person's challenges were unique, requiring different solutions and techniques. Some trainees needed confidence-building exercises, others required technical adjustments, and many simply needed someone who understood what it felt like to fail repeatedly before finding success. The most important thing I learned, Sarah often told new trainees, is that failure isn't permanent unless you accept it as permanent. Every person has the potential for excellence, but sometimes it takes unconventional approaches to unlock that potential. Her words carried special weight because the trainees knew she had experienced the same struggles and frustrations they were facing. Rodriguez's training revolution had spread far beyond the original marksmanship program. Military installations across the country were implementing personalized instruction methods in various specialties, from aircraft maintenance to communications technology. The success rates in training programs increased significantly as instructors learned to adapt their methods to individual learning styles and natural abilities. Sarah maintained regular contact with Rodriguez, who had been promoted and assigned to develop military training protocols at the Pentagon. Their professional relationship had evolved into a mentorship that continued to influence both of their careers. Rodriguez often consulted with Sarah about new training methods and used her ongoing experiences with struggling trainees to refine his approaches. The ripple effects of Sarah's transformation extended into her personal life as well. The confidence and problem-solving skills she had developed during her marksmanship training helped her excel in other areas of military service. She received commendations for leadership, was selected for advanced education programs, and began developing a reputation as someone who could succeed in challenging assignments that others found intimidating. But perhaps the most meaningful aspect of Sarah's journey was the impact she had on other people who felt like failures or misfits in traditional military training environments. She received letters from trainees across the country who had heard her story and found inspiration to persevere through their own struggles. Many credited her example with giving them the motivation to seek alternative approaches rather than accepting defeat. "Your story changed my entire military career," wrote one trainee who had been struggling with technical training. "When I learned that someone could go from complete failure to expert instructor in just a few months, it made me realize that my struggles were temporary challenges rather than permanent limitations." Sarah's influence extended beyond individual success stories. Military training specialists began studying her case as an example of how proper instruction and determination could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Her experience became part of instructor training programs, teaching military personnel to recognize when traditional methods weren't working and to seek innovative solutions for struggling trainees. Years later, Sarah would look back on her initial failures at the shooting range as the most important experiences of her military career. Those weeks of missing every target had taught her lessons about persistence, adaptability, and the importance of personalized approaches that served her well throughout her service and beyond. She often reflected on how different her life might have been if Rodriguez hadn't taken the time to understand her individual needs and develop customized training methods. Rodriguez's simple act of raising his hand had been more than just an unconventional training technique. It had been a symbol of trust, creativity, and the belief that every person deserved individualized attention rather than standardized treatment. That gesture had unlocked Sarah's potential and ultimately influenced military training methods for thousands of future service members. The shooting range where Sarah had once struggled to hit a single target became a place of triumph and inspiration. New trainees would often hear the story of the soldier who couldn't hit anything until a SEAL instructor tried a different approach. The story served as a reminder that success often requires thinking beyond conventional methods and that the most dramatic transformations can happen when people are willing to challenge traditional assumptions about teaching and learning. Sarah's legacy in the military extended far beyond her individual achievements. She had become living proof that failure could be transformed into excellence through proper guidance, determination, and the willingness to try new approaches. Her story continued to inspire military personnel to seek alternative solutions when facing seemingly impossible challenges, and her influence on training methods would benefit countless service members for generations to come.